Hello and welcome to another Sprues and Brews video. Today we are looking at the latest Necromunda Supplement, House of Shadow. So first of all, massive thanks to Games Workshop for sending us a free copy of House of Shadow and the Specialist's Kit to have a look at, a bit of a unboxing and review with you guys. Yeah, it's no secret if you've been staying tuned to this channel that I am a big fan of the House of series for Necromunda. These are essentially codexes of a sort for Necromunda. They expand the 6 core gangs found in Gangs of the Underhive and give them a load of new lore, load of new options and a load of supplemental material to enhance your games of Necromunda with. And yeah, they are really fun. We've had one for each of the main houses so far, and in the final gang we've got House Delaque with their House of Shadow. Yeah, I've been looking forward to this one because I'm a big fan of Delaque. I played Delaque back in the original version of Necromunda, and yeah, I've had a gang that I've had painted up and ready to go, and I've been dying to get some supplemental stuff to reinforce them with. So yeah, I mean, if you've not had any of these books before, or you're looking to get into Necromunda, then really this is the best way to do it. They give you kind of all the information about the gang, all the different fighters that you can have. If you've got Gangs of the Underhive, you've got pretty much 2 pages per gang with the options and the weapons and stuff you can take. This adds a load of more stuff to them. So if you want to play Necromunda, you want to do one of those gangs, I would recommend picking up these books. So yeah, let's have a look into House of Shadow and see what we get in here. So first of all, as ever, the books are gorgeous, filled with cool artwork, some kind of in-universe stuff, and loads of lore and new pictures and stuff in here. Now, lore-wise, this book is amazing. So House Delaque, by their very nature, are sneaky and covert, and not even the inhabitants of Necromunda really know too much about them. And in this book, we see a few theories and ideas and suggestions of who they could be and what the background might be. We see what could be the kind of true story. And what I like about this book is that there's the element of actually the details that we get in here could have been influenced and changed and redacted by Delaque themselves. But what we do learn is that thousands of years ago, Delaque was a watery planet and there was intelligent aquatic life that lived within the planet. And the oldest and most intelligent of these saw themselves as gods and dwelt deep in the depths of the ocean, and they used their influence to encourage the lesser aquatic life forms to go up on land and essentially make sure they were safe for when the oceans would boil away. Radiation and climate change and all that stuff caused the oceans to drain, and this fish life kind of evolved, came onto land and kind of dug underground reservoirs for them to store their gods for when that happened. Thousands of years pass, mankind comes to Necromunda, it becomes a grim industrial hell, and what little water was there has long been evaporated, used, whatever. And various people within Necromunda start having these strange nightmares. A planet that's come off its orbit passes near to the planet, and all these unrelated people, even though they've never met each other, suddenly feel a strange connection. They travel down, they hear kind of voices and a strange connection from something deep within the planet. And essentially those people came on to become Delaque. They slowly infiltrated other gangs and houses and kind of companies and facilities within Necromunda, and like mould growing on a bit of bread, by the time the rest of Necromunda realised what was happening, they'd already kind of corrupted and spread and grown, and they're everywhere and nowhere. And yeah, there's some really cool kind of Cthulhu-esque lore in here with these old gods who are potentially pulling the strings in the background. We don't really know if it's alien intelligence or the chaos gods or even a Cthulhu-style elder god. Or maybe it's all nonsense and that's just rumours and hearsay created by House Delaque in order to intimidate and spread fear and disinformation. And it's really cool. It's kind of more of a hard sci-fi take with dashings of cosmic horror, which is yeah, something new for the 40k universe. I quite like that. So yeah, definitely well worth a read, the lore section, because there's some really fun stuff, and like I say, really expands upon that information that's in the Gangs of the Underhive book. So moving on to the gang lists themselves, we see quite a few changes here for House Delaque. Not so much in stats, very little was changed there, and even in points costs were pretty much the same. But there's a couple of major changes that will really change the way you create a Delaque gang. So first of all, we've got the Master of Shadow. He is your leader. Stats wise, he is identical. He's 10 points cheaper at 100 credits. However, he doesn't come with armour anymore, so you've got to buy that separately. So essentially, they cost the same price. There's a few different options in here. They can now take light carapace armour instead if they want to, if you want a bit of a heavier armoured leader. The big change, however, is that you can now give them psychic powers. For a 30 credit upgrade, they become a Psyker and they get access to 3 brand new psychic disciplines that are unique to Delaque. We'll see those in a little bit when we come into the rules in the back of the book. But that's a big change. And this is not just usable on the Delaque leaders as well, as we'll see later on. The champions, even some of the new Juve types have access to psychic powers, meaning that you're probably going to have a quite expensive, small-sized and relatively fragile force, but absolutely loaded with psychic powers, which is really, really cool. So yeah, so the Master of Shadow, not much change but psychic powers. We get the Phantom, who is the classic champion that we got from the previous list. Again, minimal changes. He's gone down in credits but doesn't come with armour anymore, so net it's the same. And again, you can take psychic powers for him as well, which is really cool. We then get the first of our new units added, and this is the Nacht-Ghuls. So these are basically Delaque assassins. Think kind of like a cyberpunk shinobi, and you're halfway there. Yeah, these guys are amazing. 2+ weapon skill. They can be set up at the start of any turn, more than 6 inches away from the enemy and out of line of sight, making them really, really deadly on the charge. They get a choice of some awesome weapons. So they get a Shiver Sword, which has Sever, so that any wounds taken just automatically puts them out of action without having to make a roll. And they can take Serpent's Fangs, which are kind of like punching daggers that ignore armour saves. I think they're +2 strength as well, so yeah, very, very good in a fight. And on top of that, they can also take psychic powers as well. Again, for a 30-point upgrade, you can make them a Psyker. They're quite expensive. You know, if you take any of those weapons that I mentioned earlier, the sword or the fangs, you're putting them around the 200 credit mark. So, yeah, not a cheap addition to your gang. But again, if you want to go maybe for an elite starting force, and you could potentially have a 5 or 6 man gang here with some of the stuff we've got in this new book. Arguably you might be better off having some cannon fodder and adding these guys as the campaign goes on, but if you do want to go down the lines of super elite psychically charged force, then you can definitely do that, and I like that you've got the option to do that if you want to, you know, depending on what your campaign's like. Next up, we've got the Scigeist. So this is a new Juve equivalent. It's a lot more expensive than a standard Juve. The main gimmick being that all of them are Psykers. So just by base, they are already Psykers. You can give them a couple of cool upgrades. They can have a Psychomancer harness, which is this big rig that they're wearing. Essentially gives them +2 to their movement. Lets them pass over terrain. It also comes with these combat claws, which are a similar stat line to the ones that I just mentioned earlier. So they ignore armour saves. So again, making them pretty deadly in a fight. Obviously, being a Juve equivalent, the stats aren't so good, but 4+ weapon skill isn't bad. I guess you're getting these for the mobility and the psychic powers. If you want to go combat, you pick up the Nacht-Ghuls instead. They can also take a couple of exotic beasts. So all of the champion equivalents can take the Cephalopod Sector, which we'll see in a little bit. They can also take Psychoterric Worms. So these essentially are little mechanical worms that can range ahead of them. They can go under impassable terrain, and then you can use them as a focal point to draw line of sight and range from for your psychic powers. They're a little bit on the expensive side at 70 credits, but yeah, if you want to keep these guys safe while they're casting their powers and have those ranging ahead, that's a pretty cool option. So quite like these. Again, quite expensive at 60 points, plus the Psycho Harness is 110. Again, you're pushing 200 points for a Juve equivalent. But again, if you do want to do a super elite force or want all these really cool specialists, then that is a cool option for you. The basic Ganger is now called a Ghost. We have no changes here really. They don't come with any armour. These do not have the option of taking psychic powers either. So you still have got your basic non-psycho dudes in here. As we've seen with the other House of books, you can make one of them into a specialist at the start of your campaign, and that gives them access to special weapons. So yeah, you'll be able to take a special weapon and mix that into you guys. We also get the Juves rebranded as Shadows. Again, 25 points, don't come with any gear, basically the same. What we do see some changes to, however, is that there's no longer a maximum credit allowance for their gear. I think previously in Gangs of the Underhive you could give them a maximum of 40 credits worth of gear, I think. That's gone now, but they do have some specific stuff that they do have access to. So essentially just pistols and close combat weapons. But as you can see, there's some fun stuff like hand flamers, web pistols. You can give them some of the more expensive exotic items if you want to. And you know, obviously Juves are a very good choice for a Necromunda campaign, so if you do want to load one up with some decent gear, you can do it at the start of the game. As per usual, they have got access to the trading post and the black market if you want to give them some gear after you've added them to your gang. So yeah, some really fun stuff there with the gangers. The new ones look really, really good. I think what you're probably going to want to do is load up on some of those tooled out champions, and then maybe fill the rest of your roster out with some Juves to make up the numbers, and obviously you need the balance in kind of gangers to non-gangers as well. So at 25 credits each, they're a good option to do that. As we've seen with the other House of books as well, you get a few kind of bounty hunters and the like scattered throughout the book. This guy's really creepy in that it's an assassin who has died, had his face removed, then grafted to another person, and each person that the face gets grafted to retains the memories of the assassin. So yeah, some weird stuff in this book, which I really like. Onto the exotic beasts. Again, we'll quickly cover these. You've got the Spectre, which is essentially a big cybernetic guard dog of sorts. You can use it to look for sentries. It'll attack people that kill your leaders and champions. 100 credits is quite expensive. Don't think there's currently a model for it. I imagine that'll be coming from Forge World. And then we've got the Psychoterric Worm we mentioned earlier, with its burrow ability and basically acts as an extender for your psychic powers. You get 2 of these in the new Specialists box as well. Again, with the other books as well, we get some new hangers-on and brutes that you can use to add to your Delaque gangs, and there's a few here that can actually be taken in other gangs as well. We'll cover the ones that are unique to this book and skip over any ones that we've seen in previous books. The Psychoterric Thrall acts similarly to the worms, but there's a couple of key differences. Main one being that these are people that have come from other gangs who have felt the call of the kind of the psychic aura that binds together all the Delaque members. So you're encouraged to model them. Say if you, I don't know, you regularly play House Escher, you can model an Escher ganger that has fallen in thrall with the Delaque. You pick which house it is when you add them to your roster. If you are fighting that house, gangs of that house get a -2 modifier to their leadership and willpower checks while they're nearby it. Other gangs get a -1 check. And basically that represents how eerie they are, and they're a bit concerned that this person has been hiding in plain sight within their own ranks. Really cool. Like I say, they also kind of extend psychic power range in a similar way to the worms. So yeah, bit of a two-use guy. Drops those checks for enemies and can exchange range for powers, of which you'll probably have quite a few. Next we've got the Spikers. These are weaponized psychers who have got some offensive spells. They can do some cool stuff like push people off walkways and the like. 90 credits, it's fairly expensive, but not bad as a kind of offensive psyche you can take, and again, you're going to be using an awful lot of psychic powers in your games. Next we have a really cool addition that any gang can take. The Whisper Merchant costs 60 for other gangs, it is 30 for Delaque. And this is a really cool dude. Essentially it gives you 6 rerolls that can be used when doing a determined scenario, choose crews, receive rewards, seek rare or illegal equipment. And what they do is changes the result of that dice to a 6. So if you want to roll the 6 for your receive rewards and get a bigger reward, you can do that. Likewise, if you're looking for exotic items, you can do that as well. Once you've done that 6 times over the course of your campaign, he will leave the gang roster unless you hire them again. In a Delaque gang for 30 points, this guy seems a no-brainer because you're going to make that money back on a single reward roll anyway. So yeah, really like that. Cool. The illustration is really cool as well. I hope we get a model that looks like that. Moving on to the brutes, we get the new model that's included in the specialist box, the Pisces Inspector. This is essentially the remnants of one of those aquatic creatures that we mentioned in the lore earlier, grafted into a kind of cybernetic body. It is a psyker in itself. It has a load of attacks. It's got some really cool weapons. Really, really like this thing. 205 points again. It's pricey, as is a lot of the elite stuff we've seen in this book. But for a tough, offensive psyker with decent weapons, seems a really good buy. You can only take 2 of them. In the box, you can potentially build 2 of them. It shares some components with the Scigeist if you build it in the Psycho rig. So yeah, bear that in mind if you do want some of these in your gang. Something else we've also seen added in the House of Books are strong alliances. So these are lesser guilds and factions that your gang can ally with in order to get some benefits. There are also some downsides to working with a allied gang. So you've got to kind of weigh up the pros and cons. Often they will allow you to take some unique fighters that join you for battle as well. All the ones we've seen really fun. Obviously we have the Slavers Guild, the Water Guild, all sorts of stuff like this. We get some introduced in this book as well. So the Iron Guild look after all of the materials on Necromunda. So the raw kind of ore that's used for all the kind of manufacturing on the planet. They are also very involved in the trade of munitions as well. So all the guns and stuff, as we can see from the really sinister image of a highly cybernetic guy with looks like a child with a platter of guns, if that's not a terrifying thought for you all. And yeah, because of that access to guns and materials that they've got, they will reduce the cost of weapons in the trading post by D3 times 10. Really good way of getting some weapons and stuff for your gangers really easily. They also reduce the rarity of items by 2, meaning that realistically, if you want a weapon, these guys are going to be able to sort it out for you. If you take them as well, and your kind of reputation is below a certain threshold, so you roll the dice and add your reputation to see if they kick off. If it's under 9, you are able to add D3 plus 2 Hive Scum to your gang for free. If it's over that, they refuse. So this is good for, we mentioned earlier that you could potentially have a very elite Delaque force, ally them with the Iron Guild. You could take advantage of this to add some Hive Scum cannon fodder to your gang. Really good option of making up the numbers, but meaning that you can take those really cool builds straight away. There are some downsides to doing this though. The main one being that any weapons, gear that you have between battles that isn't given to a ganger has to be handed over to the Iron Guild. So that basically means you can't take advantage of this guns rule to have a bit of a stockpile of weapons in the background that you hand out to new gangers as they join your guild. Any that are unattended to will be taken back by the Iron Guild. You can always test the alliance, but obviously there's a chance that they end your partnership and just disappear, so you've got to bear that in mind. I think these are a pretty good option for Delaque though. The next alliance that we get in here is the Psy Syndicate. So this is a criminal organisation who basically traffics psychers. As you can imagine from that, they give you access to a kind of psycho character that will join your battles. Arguably, Delaque have got a lot of psychic potential anyway, but other guilds who haven't got easy access to psychers, especially criminal gangs, could use this as a nice way of getting a psyker into your warband. There's a downside to that. Your gang has horrific nightmares because of the close proximity of this rogue psyker, and that could cause your gangers to not be able to come to a battle because they've been up all night screaming at the nightmares. Awesome. And you also draw the attention of the authorities as well. So between your games, you could be hunted down by psycho hunters, and there's a chance some bad things happen to your gang. So a lot of risk on this one. I'd argue for Delaque, you've got enough psychers anyway. This is potentially a good one if you do need some psychic support. The next guild, however, I'd argue is probably a better choice for that though. And those are House Psy. This is a very oriental themed house. In the little lore write-up, it says that they claim to be destined from ancient Japan. However, that is a bit dubious, and they may well just be using those stylings and look to build up a bit of an aura and a persona there. Essentially, again, they are very psychic based. They offer a service of psychic training, so they can take one of your gang members and grant them psychic powers, or if they've already got access to a discipline, allow them to earn an additional psychic power. They also give you access to the Onimodo Coven, which is a team of a psyker and a null who you can use, obviously, the psychic powers to go offensive, or the null to shut down psychic abilities. This seems a really, really cool guild to have. They've got a very oriental styling, as we've seen from there, kind of a cybernetic porcelain-faced geisha vibe going on for the psyker. There's some pictures in a little bit, and I really hope we get some models to support these, because that sounds really cool to me. Like with the other psyker-based ally that you can have, they do give your gang nightmares, and there's a chance that they could get injuries and flesh wounds and stuff from that. So the Mind Locked Weird is the guy that you get if you're the Psy Syndicate. Pretty cool combat psyker. And then for the Coven from House Psy, you get the Null psyker combo. Essentially, they've got kind of activation collars, so you can either have the psychic powers turned on or the nullification powers turned on. You can't have both of them at the same time, which makes sense because the null just kind of drain the effects of the psyker anyway. So if you are another gang maybe and facing House Delaque with their ample psychic powers, these might be a good shout to ally with, because then the null will give you some psychic defense against that. Equally, if you're Delaque and you want to double down on the psychic powers, then yeah, take these guys. They get their own tree of psychic powers. She is a sanctioned psyker as well. Obviously a lot of the stuff in the Delaque book are unsanctioned, so you're open to getting captured by bounty hunters and the like. And yeah, absolutely gorgeous art. Can't wait to see what models they put out for these. So something we've seen with the other house of books is some supplemental material that helps expand the gang and gives you some more options. We see some Delaque unique house favours. Essentially these that you roll and try to petition for help. There's a chance that something bad happens and one of your gangers gets dragged away into the night screaming, never to be seen again. The average result here is that you get some more equipment. 2d6 times 10 credits worth of weapons and armour, which is a really nice way of giving your guy some more materials. There is a chance you get a new ganger just added to your gang with some materials. Again, pretty good if you've started with an elite force and you need some more bodies. There's also an option where you can get some experience for each of your guys, but there's a chance on a roll of 1 that something goes bad. So yeah, really like that, that's pretty cool. We also get some subplots. So again, if you're using the subplot rules out of the newer rulebook, I think that was in, there's some Delaque flavoured ones that you can have instead of those. Delaque get their own skill tree, which is really, really nice. There's some amazing powers in here, and I think I'll definitely be putting my leader. It's primary skill for a leader. They'll definitely be taking some of these. So Faceless, your enemy fighters have to pass a willpower test to shoot them with a ranged weapon, or even place a blast marker so it's touching them. So yeah, that essentially can make you immune to gunfire if your enemy is failing willpower checks. Really, really nice option. Psy Touched lets them re-roll the willpower check when they're trying to manifest the psychic powers, and also means they can always buy Ghast from the black market, which is like a psychic drug. Takedown is really cool. This lets you capture on a 4+. So if that person with the skill kills someone during the battle at the end of the game, you roll the dice on a 4+, they capture them. So it makes them much easier to capture people, which is pretty cool. Rumourmonger gives you a new kind of post-battle action that lets you reduce the reputation of the gang you're fighting by D3 and increase your own by the same amount. So I like that. Fake Out makes it easier for you to determine what missions you're playing. You roll 3d6 and pick the best combination that you want. And then finally, Doppelganger is a really, really nice one. The enemy gang has to do a test at the start of the game, an intelligence check, and if they fail, you get to bring an additional ganger to that fight. So again, really helps you with your limited numbers, gets you some extra people into the fight. I really like Doppelganger, but yeah, there's some cool options there. Like we said earlier, there's a lot of potential for psychic powers in this book as well. So there's 3 new disciplines that you can have. So Madness, this is all playing with people's sanity and the like. So you can force people to become broken, you can make people become insane, you can force a particular ganger to activate, maybe forcing somebody who looks like they're waiting for later on in the turn to react to somebody as a way of kind of wasting that ready marker. You can completely remove a ready marker, you can stop enemy fighters from being able to rally, and you can limit a enemy fighter to only make 1 action rather than 2, which is really cool because it means you can stop them from doing any double actions as well. So some really good stuff that kind of limits what they can do. The next discipline we've got is Delusion. These are pretty fun as well. So you can make somebody pinned, you can make somebody see all their friendly fighters as enemy fighters, so if there are any abilities that target a nearest enemy fighter, it will hit them instead, so it kind of makes them see their friends as enemies. Ghost and Shadow allows you to turn somebody's facing. Deceitful Thoughts lets you move an enemy fighter, and that does let you make them leap off platforms and the like to their doom, which is pretty cool. Suicidal Embrace lets them make a close combat attack against themselves, so if they've got some particularly nasty melee weapons, they could do some serious hurt to themselves. And finally, they can force someone to take a toughness check, and if they fail, they take a flesh wound. So some pretty powerful powers here. And then finally, the Darkness powers. We've got a way of making enemy fighters re-roll their ranged attacks. You can move friendly fighters, potentially even into base contact with an enemy fighter, which is cool. One of the powers makes you count as being in cover, which is pretty nice. My favourite one is Eternal Slumber. You've got a bit of an aura, and anything that is seriously injured is just out of action. They just pass out, which is really cool. Cloak of Whispers stops the enemy gang from using gang tactics on you. And then finally, Sight's Reach causes darkness. So there used to be a gang tactic that just plunged the entire board into darkness. This is similar but in a localised area. Likewise with the other house of books, we get some unique Delaque terrain as well, with the rules for them. I really hope that we see some models for these from Forge World. I'd really like to see some resin models to represent the various terrain pieces. Sadly, we've not seen them so far. I'm sure you could easily convert your own up though for that. We also get a pair of scenarios as well, playing into the kind of vibe of House Delaque. So there's one about planting spying devices, another one which is pretty interesting, where you've got hidden objectives. So it's a kind of a game of chicken where you try and work out what the other side is doing, and you can also like veto some as well. So pretty cool scenario there. So then, yeah, as with the other books, we get a nice little colour section showing all the gorgeous painted miniatures and a couple of different house schemes as well, along with a kind of glossary of all the weapons showing you which weapon on the sprue relates to what. And again, all your stats and information in the back of the book. What's really good with these is that you've got this nice glossary in the back for you to be able to look up any equipment, special abilities, special rules, all that kind of stuff. So, like I say, it kind of acts like a codex. It makes it really easy to be able to play your games. And then finally in the back of the book, if you haven't picked up the Gang Tactics cards, they are replicated here as well. So everybody has got access to those Gang Tactics. So yeah, really nice book. this is probably one of my favourite House of books. All 6 of them have been really cool and I've really enjoyed them. If only for the lore. The gaming content's really fun, but the lore's really expanded upon what we know about the Underhive, so really enjoyed that. Before we go though, we're going to have a quick look at the plastic kit that is accompanying this release as well. So these are the specialists, so the Nacht-Ghuls, the Scigeists, the Spectres and the worms. So let's pop these open and have a look. Now when these first went up for pre-order, people were a little bit confused that there didn't seem to be an even amount of models in the box. There was different builds and the like. And it is because, as we'll see in a bit, the Spectre uses some parts that are also used towards the Scigeist. So again, as we've seen from a lot of Games Workshop releases, quite straightforward instructions. As you see, the tendrily bits on here though are also used as the kind of tentacles from this. So I think you'd be able to build one of each or 2 of one particular build. So you just need to bear that in mind when you're building your models for these. The Sprues themselves are really nice. We get some cool stuff on here like the Shiver Blade from the Assassin, the weird gribbly alienness of the Spectre itself. I'm sure if you just built the Scigeist in the Psycho harness, you'd have some spare parts of this to maybe convert into something else, or maybe use for some of the terrain that we mentioned earlier. But yeah, really nice kit. Planning on building up these and painting it. We'll probably feature them on the painting stream that we do on a Sunday. So every Sunday at about 7 o'clock we do a bit of a stream. So hopefully over the next few weeks I'll be painting up some of these guys, because I can't wait to get some paint on them. So yeah, that is a look at House of Shadow, the final of the 6 main gangs for Necromunda. Really good series, really cool book. We know that at the end of the year there is a brand new gang coming out for Necromunda, and presumably there will be a supplement with that as well. We don't know who it is. We don't know if it's an old supplemental one like the Spirers or the kind of the tribes that live outside of the city. I imagine we'll probably get something reinvented like that. I'd like to see something completely new and wacky and weird. You know, it'd be cool to have a new gang with a completely different aesthetic. I imagine we probably are going to get one of those supplemental gangs that they brought out for the first run of Necromunda. Maybe reimagined and given a new twist. And yeah, definitely a good sign that the future of Necromunda is bright. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this look at House of Shadow. I have also done a full write-up over on spruesandbrews.com to accompany this, with all the details and a bit more information about the book itself. So yeah, until next time, we'll see you later and hope you have a good week.